Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome and welcome back. My name is Brooke, aka Brooks Moon. I hope you're doing good. So, full transparency, I wanted to post this video the week of Valentine's Day. It's currently March. February was really difficult for me. Didn't get to do as much as I wanted to do in the month of February, so sorry, but better late than never. So happy late Valentine's Day. I'm only a few weeks off, and St. Patrick's Day is technically closer than Valentine's Day is, but we're not gonna worry about it. Life just got so chaotic. I really wanted to post this video the month of Valentine's Day because of the content in which I'm going to be talking about. Also, please ignore the sound of my voice. I'm getting over being sick. February was not kind to me. I haven't talked much about the types of genres that I read as a reader, but I am not a romance reader. My go-to genre is usually fantasy, and fantasy a lot of the times has romance in it. Don't get me wrong, I love when romance is put into a book and it works really well as a through line for a B-plot. The romance genre is not one that I seek out often. Some of my favorite books have a very strong romance B-plot in them, like The Hunger Games or The Cruel Prince. Started thinking about this video, I wanted to make sure that I actually gave the genre the attention that it deserves. I didn't want to just read 2 or 3 books and call it a day. So I actually wanted to do kind of like a quote-unquote deep dive into this genre. I read a total of 6 books. That is nothing in comparison to the entirety of the genre, and I don't want you to take me just reading these 6 books as everything in this genre. That's not the case at all. What I read is like a pebble in comparison to a mountain. There are so many other romance books that I didn't even touch on in this video that I'm actually wanting to read after doing the research for this video. Going into this video, I wanted to make sure that I was kind of hitting the sub-genres that exist. So if I want to call them sub-genres, it's just kind of like subcategories within the romance genre, and that is talking about the different types of romance. So when I went into this and started planning and doing research into finding different types of books and stuff for me to read, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just reading straight stories. I genuinely don't think I would have enjoyed this video as much if I did just read straight stories. So going into this video, I wanted to make sure I was also hitting the queer romance subgenres. Excuse my cat. Can you? Hey, buddy. Hey, bud. Why are you right there? He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's gonna sit there no matter what. For this video, I decided to read 2 FF or female-female romance books, 2 FM female-male romance books, and 2 MM male-male romance books. I myself am not a straight person. I fall into the LGBT category, and I wanted to make sure that I was talking about queer stories in addition to the heteronormative stories that you hear about all the time, because queer stories deserve to be told and discussed, and that's why queer books need to be read. Diversify your shelves. But also going into this, I wanted to make sure that the queer books I read were written by queer authors, just because it just didn't feel right reading a queer book written by a straight person, because they fully do not understand what it's like to be part of that community. So for the sake of this video, all of the books that I read were written by queer authors, with the exception of the last one, which I will get into when I start discussing it. As I was reading, I also wanted to annotate as I went along, because I kind of did this for a research purpose, but also to deep dive into a genre I don't usually read. I wanted to look for things for the sake of this video. I wanted to see if there were things that I noticed across the board with all 6 of these books. So there were 5 categories that I was kind of looking at as I read. I wanted to see if there were common character archetypes that existed within the romance genre, as well as cliches or things that I found cheesy, in addition to just regular tropes. I feel like these 3 things are easily pinpointed in the romance genre just because they kind of reuse the same ones over and over again. But that goes for any genre. That's not just the romance genre. There are very common character archetypes that are used in certain genres, and that's not a bad thing. It's the way that you use those archetypes, tropes, and cliches in a positive light can make or break a piece of media. To see if any of those did that. I wanted to see if they did them well or if they did them poorly. Because all of these books kind of fell into the rom-com category as well, I wanted to mark things that were romantic, because if there's no romance in a romance book, then what is it? And also funny, because if it's supposed to be a rom-com style book but nothing is funny, then again, what is the point of putting it in that subcategory? I did all of this solely for myself and for the sake of this video, just because I thought it would be fun. to do as I was reading, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself as I annotated these books. The first book that I read is Iris Kelly Doesn't Dig by Ashley Herring Blake. I found this book at an end table at Barnes & Noble while I was browsing one week. I read the back of it and I was like, this would be perfect for this video that I'm doing. I didn't know when I picked this book up that it was the third installment in the series that she's writing. I didn't know that there were two previously before that until after I started reading the book. There's no indication on the back that this is like part of a series. Usually they have like the book covers on the back of the book. The only indication was that she was an author of another book that was a New York Times bestseller, but doesn't indicate that it was a series. So how was I supposed to know? This book follows Iris Kelly, who is a romance writer, but she is not a romantic person. Iris is not the type to be in a serious romantic relationship, because she's had some trouble with romance relationships in the past. So she's the hookup type, which is totally fine. To distract from everything going on with her book and pressure from her family and friends about not being in a relationship, she goes and hooks up with a stranger who she meets named Stefana, who is the love interest in this book, whose actual name is Stevie. And that goes horribly wrong. I'm not going to get into details, but trigger warning for puke. To distract herself even further, she decides that she's going to join the play of Much to Do About Nothing in a nearby town. It just so happens that Stevie is the lead in Much to Do About Nothing. But Stevie had lied to her friends and said that the hookup went really, really well when it was the exact opposite because she didn't want to be embarrassed. And so her friends think that she's dating Iris, and so it turns into a whole fake dating scenario. Iris and Stevie then agree to stay together because Iris can use it for her book for inspiration, and Stevie then won't get caught in a lie with her friends. And from there, the book progresses. Stevie and Iris both have really big friend groups. There are a lot of characters in this book. It didn't take me that long to get used to everyone, so I kind of as I got like a fourth of the way through the book, I was like, okay, I know who is who, and that is totally fine, even if I was a little bit confused at the beginning. With there being a huge friend group on both sides, there's a lot of diversity in this book. Diversity from both sexuality and gender as well as ethnicity, which I thought was super, super cool. All of the characters in this book, for the most part, from my understanding, are queer and fall into the LGBT group. My favorite character is from Stevie's friend group, Ren. They are a non-binary character, and they sound like the coolest fucking person that I have ever heard described in a book ever in my life. This is also the first book that I read where demisexuality is even mentioned or brought up. It's not a very common thing that has existed in media. I feel like that mention of asexuality does not really get mentioned at all, and this is the first time I have seen demisexuality be mentioned ever in anything that I've ever consumed. Which to me was super cool as someone who didn't know what it was like, what the word demisexuality was, but knew what it felt like to be demisexual. It's so cool to see that representation be brought up in a book and kind of explained to a very small degree. So in case you, the audience member reading the book, don't know what it is, you can kind of get more of an understanding of it. There's also a lot of body and sex positivity in this book, as well as consent. Iris is a very sex positive person. Stevie is not, but that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with either one of them being one way or another. They're both accepted by their friend group and embraced for those things. Into body positivity and sex positivity, there is also a very real representation of what it is like to have an anxiety disorder in this book, as someone who has an anxiety disorder in real life. Stevie suffers from panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and I fully thought that they were so well represented in this book. I felt very seen reading this book and seeing Stevie go through the things that she was going through as they were happening, and how the people around her reacted to help her. Multiple times where Stevie is getting help from Iris to help her through a panic attack, or one of her other friends. It brought tears to my eyes just because of how real it is, and just how Everyone is so understanding, and it made my heart so warm to see like an actual real representation of what it's like to have anxiety, even the like negative sides of it, where you have like mood swings and stuff after coming down from a panic attack. It made it very realistic and very real, and I greatly appreciated it as someone who suffers from those things in real life. There are a lot of very cute moments in this book because it is a rom-com book. Like, a cute moment happens, it's like very high on the cute scale. Like, it's very much up there to like cheesy level, but not so cheesy that you're like, oh my god, like, why is this in here? And when you come to reality, there is a lot of miscommunication and assumptions made by both of them to each other. There was so much miscommunication and just lack of communication when communicating how they truly felt to each other. Because, newsflash, fake dating is never fake, okay? It always ends up with someone feeling something real at the end of the day. That is the whole point of the trope. So much in this book because of that, and it made me want to rip my hair out of my head. Just tell each other how you feel. Oh my god. There are a lot of basic tropes in this book. Like I mentioned, fake dating to the, what? I have feelings? No, that's crazy. It's all fake. It's not real. Yes, it is, bitch. That's the whole point of the fucking trope, is that you end up loving each other. You fall in love. Spoiler, kind of. So skip a few seconds ahead if you don't want to be spoiled, starting now. There's a third act breakup. And that trope makes me so angry. I just think it's dumb. And I understand that is the, like, how plot structure works. There has to be a thing that happens at the end that makes your characters think that all is lost and this is the end of the end, and then, like, the resolution happens. But I guess it's the only way to get that thing to happen within a romance book if you're solely focused on their relationship. I just hate that trope. I hate that trope so much. I think it's just so annoying. And I've come to the conclusion after reading 6 of these books that if there is one, it's because they get together, like, by like the 4th of the way through the book. If they like start like expressing that they have feelings for each other and they actually care about each other, there's gonna be a fallout at the end, and it drives me up a wall. Spoiler is now over, so if you didn't skip far enough ahead, I'm so sorry. We have the jealous ex and the overbearing family tropes. The jealous ex is from Stevie's end, and the overbearing family is from Iris's end. But the overbearing family for Iris really exists in the beginning and the end. They kind of drive her to do things that she doesn't necessarily want to do. And the jealous ex for Stevie is a catalyst in the middle between the relationship of Stevie and Iris, and that kind of helps develop that further. And then for both of them, you have the supportive besties trope. Like I said, they have a very big friend group. I think both of them have at least 4 friends in their friend group. I was just a little confused when they were all in a room together and like together in a group setting. I was like, I don't remember who this is fully, but that's okay. I'll figure it out. And then I did, after being confused for about a page. There were a lot of times that Stevie and Iris pissed me off in this because they just didn't communicate. The miscommunication and lack of communication existed extremely in this book, and it made me want to scream. If they tried to say anything to the other person, it was like, don't know all. Like, bro, like, they are not listening. Like, they are so stuck in their own head that they are not paying attention to whatever you were saying to them. A character archetype that I've noticed is the author slash like writer slash creative archetype that exists in romance books, specifically rom-com books. It's like this weird obsession with having like a creative of some sort. Iris being a romance writer made this book very self-aware of itself, but not in the best way. I think it could have been navigated a lot better to where this book kind of wasn't as on the nose as it was in certain points. There was a moment in which the words fake dating trope were actually typed in this book, and I read it with my own eyes that it didn't hit in the way that it was supposed to. It just came off as super cheesy. There are also a lot of smutty scenes in this book. I say a lot. There are 2. There are 2 smutty scenes in this book. Have things that build up to it. I'm not the type who enjoys reading explicit details of smut scenes. I'm sorry, that's just me. If you enjoy that, you do you, boo, but it's just not something that I prefer in books. There are only 2 of them. It could have been far worse, and it wasn't, so I'm so glad that it was not. Like I said, it kind of built up to it, and it kind of makes sense given the circumstances that are happening in the book. Not for me. Not what I prefer in books when I'm reading. So if you enjoyed that, good for you. Like, it kind of made sense, and it felt very realistic. Overall, I rated this book 3.5 stars. I didn't hate it. It did keep me extremely interested, and I read it in such a short period of time. I really just wanted to see how things were going to unfold, regardless of how many times they frustrated me to the point of me wanting to scream. I think I might read the other 2 books before this, which is insane for me to go backwards, but you know what? To each their own. I enjoyed her writing, and I enjoyed these characters. So yeah, didn't hate this one. I thought it was actually pretty okay. Moving on. The second book that I read is Something to Talk About by Meryl Winsler, and this is also another book that I found while I was browsing Barnes & Noble, and I read the back of it, and I was like, oh, that'd be perfect for this video. I was mainly drawn to this book because it takes place in the film world setting. It takes place in Hollywood, which to me opens up a whole nother realm of possibilities in the romance genre. Also, the only slow burn romance that I read out of all 6 of these books. I prefer slow burn over, like, just, I guess, not slow burn. What's the word for that? I don't know. This book is following the character of Jo, who is a very famous ex-child star, now very famous showrunner of a very big queer show that is on television, and her assistant Emma, who has been working for Jo for about a year at this point, and it is following the 2 of them in their career as they go through Hollywood. The entire start of this book is because Jo asks Emma to go with her to the SAG Awards, and a photo is taken of the 2 of them on the red carpet where Jo made Emma laugh, and the tabloids take that image and run with it and assume that they're dating, and that kind of creates the #1 tension between the 2 of them in this book. Jo does not want to come out about the images being fake, but Emma does because it's affecting Emma's work, because everybody's just assuming she's sleeping with her boss for her job, which does not make her look good at all. But Jo doesn't want to talk about her relationships because she, and I quote, never talked about them in the past, so she's not going to start to now, which again creates a kind of tension between them. And then as those things resolve, more conflicts come up because they just so happens they develop feelings for each other. Shocker. Because this was a slow burn romance, there's a lot of push and pull throughout this book, and I think that's just a thing that exists within slow burn romances. Something will happen and then characters will pull away, and then something will happen and they'll pull away again because they don't want to tell themselves that it's actually happening. That's what happens in this book. Things would happen between the 2 of them and they would not want to talk about it, and then they would talk about it and then they would move on and things would be fine for like a day, and again they wouldn't want to talk about it because then they would have to admit their feelings to each other, and oh my god, we are falling back into the lack of communication trope. Just talk to each other about your feelings. I promise you it won't kill you. The lack of them not talking to each other then resulted in them assuming things about each other, which then they would get pissed about hypothetical things that didn't even happen, and if they just talked to each other, then they wouldn't have been pissed in the first place. I don't get it. There are a few different tropes in this book, one of them being an age gap between Emma and Jo. Jo is in her late 30s in this book, and Emma is like in her early mid-20s, and I have never been a huge fan of age gap, whether that they are adults or not. It's just not something that I particularly enjoy. I don't like it. I don't know why. It's just, it weirds me out. I believe it's like a 14-year age gap, which like is fine when you meet as an adult, but like to me it's just weird. I don't like it. I understand they are both adults and they met when they were adults, so it's fine, but to me it's just weird and makes me uncomfy, and I'm not a fan of it at all. Can you wait until after I'm done filming? No, he can't. Wanting to make everything about himself. Lack of communication. It just exists in this again. Talking about things that happen, even if they work together, does not make you unprofessional, and they kind of like took it as that, and I don't understand why. Healthy boundaries are okay, but it's like if you're putting up so many boundaries that it's just exhausting, then they're not boundaries anymore. Another trope that exists is this is very grumpy ex Sunshine, where Joe is the grumpy and Emma is the sunshine, but it's more like grumpy is the person in the film industry who's been working for so long and has been crushed simultaneously. Ex Sunshine, which is the person who has not been working in the film industry for very long and still has high hopes. There are a lot of cute moments in this book as it progresses, and that Joe realizes that she starts having feelings for Emma. She just like starts to remember little details about Emma as the book goes on that like she doesn't need to, because she's the boss and like Emma is her assistant, so she doesn't necessarily have to remember things about Emma, but she chooses to. Jo is genuinely a very good boss in this book. She cares about her employees, she wants them to succeed, Emma being one of those people. In addition to the rest of her cast and crew, she cares very much about her work and what she does and the people that she does that work with. When they actually communicate to each other, the moments are very, very pure. They are on the same page and know exactly what's going on in the other person's head. They work simultaneously together. I also really enjoyed the relationship that they have outside of work. Jo gets to know Emma's sister outside of Emma, and Emma and her sister have a very close bond, so it creates this triangle between the three of them that I think was a very good addition to this book and this story. It kind of drove their characters in a little bit of a different direction that was positive at the end of the day, just because they both had a mutual person that was outside of their workplace that they could talk to about things, and they trusted that person. There was a very good boss in this. Like I said, there were a lot of layers to her character that I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved reading her when things were from her point of view. Emma's point of view was also pretty good, but I preferred Jo's over Emma's. There is a spicy scene at the end of this book. There's only one. It's very brief. It's not as descriptive as Iris Kelly was, and it's a slow burn, so there's only one at the end, like literally within the last 15 pages of the book. It's there. I also gave this book 3.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed the story. The writing was okay. I was not the best, but I still enjoyed the story. I thought that the characters were interesting, specifically Jo. I also really liked the setting. I think that the setting of Hollywood can open up a whole realm of possibilities when it comes to writing a book like this. There were a lot of layers to this book that go outside of the romance genre that I thoroughly enjoyed, that talk about some of the issues that exist within the film industry. And as someone who is trying to enter the film industry and has learned about these things while in college, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The universe felt more engaging to me than that of Iris Kelly, just because it was more something that I was familiar with and knew more about. If you like slow burn romances that are set in the Hollywood realm, I would highly recommend this book. The writing is meh, but like it's still enough to like get you through the book. Listen to the audiobook. I highly recommend the audiobook because the narrators for both Jo and Emma have excellent voices and they do a wonderful job that I really, really liked listening to the book. So yeah, didn't hate this one that much. I actually liked it. Next two books that I read were MLW. So they were the straight books, and I honestly did not think I was going to enjoy them as much as I did, but I did, which shocked me a little bit. Really did think that they were going to be super cheesy, but they weren't, and I was proven wrong, which is the whole point of this video. The next book that I read was Beach Read by Emily Henry. I have never read any of Emily Henry's books. I've heard of her. I know that she's like a big staple in the romance genre, at least like modern romance right now. Found this book while I was at Target, and I heard good things about this one specifically, so I decided to pick it up and decide to read it for this video. Essentially, the story of Beach Read is about this woman, January, who is also a romance writer, and she is having to deal with the passing of her father. One of those things that she has to deal with is his beach house, and she learned that her dad is not the person that she thought he was. She's in the middle of processing her grief as well as needing to write a whole book, and this beach house that her dad owned, that she is now having to take care of, is next door to Augustus Everett, who was her college rival and is also a very well-known literary fiction writer. There's like this kind of beef between them, and so the book revolves around her getting to know Augustus again and their relationship, as well as the two of them making a bet to see if one could write the other genre, so if she could write literary fiction and if he could write romance, because neither of them kind of take each other seriously. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did. It was not one that I really thought was going to make waves in the way that it did for me. There were multiple instances in which I was crying because of this book. A lot of layers to this book, to the point where I didn't feel like I was reading a rom-com book, which some people might hate, but I actually prefer in books like this. It focused heavily on their relationship, but it was also focusing on them as individual characters, even though you're only seeing this from January's point of view. Both January and Gus are so complex from the beginning, and I was really hooked because of that. January's whole situation with her father has underlying layers of grief and having to come to terms with the type of person that she has become because of everything that she's gone through, and her character development was really genuine. That she was navigating all of this, just like there were certain points like at the end that I was absolutely in tears, crying my eyes out. Here's proof of that. I did not think that a romance book could make me cry the way that this is making me cry. Emily Henry, count your days. My god. It's not even like about their relationship. This is something completely different. You can hug your dad. I'm gonna hug my dad when he gets home. Jesus Christ. I don't have daddy issues. I love my dad so much, but the idea of like having to lose your father and go through that just like really brought tears to my eyes. It was so well written. I thought it was so good. And then the mystery of Gus and like trying to unveil like why he is the way that he is and all of the things that he's going through simultaneously while he's talking to January. There were a lot of layers to him as well that you got to see peeled back as January was talking to him more. This was a very textbook rivals to lovers trope that occurred in this book, which is probably one of my favorites other than like enemies to lovers. Both like enemies to lovers and rivals to lovers have this like super rich meat to them that if it's done correctly can be so successful, and I feel like it was. There's also underlying pining that's in this as well, which was absolute gold to add as another layer to the rivals to lovers. I adored their chemistry. I thought their banter was actual real banter, not just some like weird like back and forth. Like they actually had good banter. Another like grumpy ex sunshine to a degree. I wouldn't say that January is necessarily sunshine, but in the eyes of Gus she is. It added to the tension between them and how they see each other, so I thought it was also a very good trope to use in this book, and the way that it was used was successful. There's also a romance lesson trope in this. It's not as on the nose as it was in Iris Kelly, but it is there. That trope being in there allowed for actual cute moments to blossom between these two characters. It wasn't constantly brought up. It was just kind of there as like a part of their deal to be able to write the books. The only time it really felt like super cheesy was when Gus was like, don't fall in love with me, but like it was cheesy in a funny way, not cheesy in like a Jesus Christ, why is this in here? Because they don't take themselves seriously. January even points it out. Said January is a romance writer in this book, but it was not as self-aware as Iris Kelly was. I feel like this is a better example of using that archetype and navigating it in a less on the nose, breaking the fourth wall type of way. The cute bits that happen in this book actually made my heart swell in the way that like things would when you're reading like super cheesy fan fiction. It was just their chemistry made those moments so much more compelling and interesting to read because you could feel the tension. The tension's clearly built up between the two of them. The book is steamy, but it's not explicit. Then once it starts going like more into the direction of like them having sex, you know what's going on, but there's no like explicit details being said. Kind of like when you're watching a movie or a show and you know that there's a sex scene happening, but the cameraman isn't like pointing to the scene, like it's pointing to other things, but you have like auditory like cues as to what's going on. It's kind of like that. It's not fade to black. You know what's happening as it's happening, but it's not explicitly described. It's not like actual written smut. The supporting characters were supporting. I did want to see more of January's best friend Sade because she was so funny. She was genuinely hilarious. I loved her character and I wish we could have seen a little bit more of her, but I understand why we didn't at the same time. Her entire subplot with her love life was incredibly entertaining, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It reminded me of like some friendships that I have in my own life, so I really, really liked it. Overall, I give this 4.5 stars. This ended up being like a favorite of mine as I was reading. I went in completely blind to this, and I know that Emily Henry has like different books for different tropes, and this one kind of like hit all of the boxes for some of the tropes that I genuinely enjoy. Usually I don't like romance books that are over 300 pages, but this one just was so compelling and so interesting that I did not mind. So if anyone has any other Emily Henry books that I should read next, please recommend in the comments, because I want to read more of her work. The next book that I read was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, and I'm gonna be completely honest, I only picked this book up because of Lexi, aka Newly Nova's review on this while she was doing her book vlog a few months ago. I had never seen myself picking up an Ali Hazelwood book just because I had somebody drunkenly explain what love theoretically was to me at one of my best friend's birthday party. And then finding out that it was a Raylo fanfiction that was published, I never saw myself picking up an Ali Hazelwood book because of the after effect of it all. I just was not ever drawn to her writing and never really wanted to read anything that she wrote. But after Lexi did her review on it, I was like, okay, this actually sounds like a really cute book. And my total honest opinion is I genuinely enjoyed this book and did not expect myself to. It's following the story of Mallory Greenleaf, who she used to be a big chess person when she was a kid, and then her father passed away and he turned out to be a really shitty guy, so she vowed to never play chess again. And then her best friend convinces her to go to this charity chess event where she plays a game against the number one player in the world and does not realize that she is playing against him, and she actually beats him. She's then recruited by a chess training group to continue to compete in these competitions because she beat him and nobody knows who she is. And the love interest is Nolan, the number one player in the world. And so it's following her navigating through the chess world as a nobody, but Nolan is like completely obsessed with her because she beat him and he doesn't know who she is and thinks she's incredibly smart. It's about all of that and then their relationship on top of it. I don't know anything about chess. I'm just gonna say that right now. I know nothing about chess. So reading this, I wasn't like nitpicking details because I didn't know the universe, but I don't feel like I missed anything not knowing the universe. This was another rivals to lovers with a headstrong female who was super stubborn, which was Mallory, and then you have a completely smitten male love interest. Both of these archetypes I absolutely adore. I think it's like a perfect match. Mallory was a very interesting character to see the story from. She is very stubborn, she is very headstrong, she is the breadwinner child of her family. She kind of makes everything complicated for herself. Also has daddy issues that run deeper than the Marianas Trench, and I just ate it up. I ate every single piece of her character up, and the way that she just kind of like disregarded Nolan every single time was just so funny to me, and it only drove him more and more insane because he was so absolutely obsessed with her. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Nolan was like the perfect enigma of a character because like you think that he's this one way because of how he's like seen in the media, and then like Mallory is like one of the very few people that he like opens up to because he's that type of guy. There's a lot of layers to him. Also, the connection that he has with her sisters and her family was so silly and cute in such a silly way. The banter between the two of them was also golden. Like, it wasn't weird or like uncomfortable, like it was actual banter. She wanted nothing to do with him and he wanted to get involved in her life and she didn't care, and is this type of character that is super ambitious and wants one thing and is doing this for one thing only, and then he does not give a shit about any of that and just wants her attention and to get to know her and actually have her care about him in the way that he cares about her. He was a perfectly obsessed man who drank his Respect Women juice, and I am so here for it. There were a few moments in this that were like could be categorized as cringy, but in my opinion it works for this book. It didn't feel cringy in the way that like it made me want to stop reading. It felt cringy in a way of like, yeah, no, this like kind of makes sense given the universe and the types of characters that these are. Like, it wasn't bad cringy. It was like okay cringy, like silly cringy. The only issue I had with this book was the ending. The way that the ending was written, and then the way that the epilogue was written doesn't fit together. The only way I think that the epilogue would have made more sense is if you actually had the ending that was kind of not promised, but like alluded to throughout this entire book. I know what happens because of what is written in the epilogue, but I wish we saw that event unfold, even though things kind of like came to a nice little conclusion between the two characters. I still wish we had that content. This is like the only time I kind of wanted this book to be a little bit longer. I kind of wanted an extra like 50 to 60 pages to describe that last little event that is being discussed throughout the entirety of this book, and then you don't even see it happen. Because that doesn't happen, the way that the epilogue is written kind of feels like they're teasing you. It's like, oh yeah, this happened and this was the result, but you didn't get to see it. I feel like it would have been even more successful if you got to see that last event that happens in the book. This is a Fade to Black book. There are no explicit details at all because it is a YA book, but there is a lot of mentions of sex in this book. It's a very open conversation with a lot of positivity behind it, which is absolutely great for there to be sex positivity in this YA book. But there is a lot of discussion of sex for a YA book, in my opinion. I ended up giving this a 4-star rating. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a fun read. It was entertaining. I liked the characters. I liked the story. I liked the universe. I thought it was super cool. I didn't want to leave this universe. It was a fun read, and I definitely enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm going to pick up any more of Ali Hazelwood books. I would probably read this book again just to feel the way that I felt as I was reading it, because it felt like I was reading like a good fan fiction, you know? And I think that props to her, who being a good fanfic writer to the point where she was able to be a published author. Good for you, boo. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I wanted to make sure that the books for MLM books that I read were written by men, specifically gay men, because while I was trying to find books to read for this part, most of the MLM books that I was finding are written by women, not queer at all, or they are queer, but they're not men, so it's not the same thing as a gay man writing for an romance book. I did find a few that I thought that fell into the rom-com category that I was actually really excited to read. The first book that I read was A Little Bit Country by Brian D. Kennedy. This was honestly a hidden gem for me. I'd never heard of Brian D. Kennedy until I picked up this book at Barnes & Noble and read the back of it, and it sounded super, super cute. So the premise of this book is following Emmett, who is a 16-year-old who wants to be the first gay country singer out there. He is obsessed with Wanda Jean, who is like this universe's version of Dolly Parton, and so he gets a job working at Wanda World, which is this universe's version of Dolly World, for the summer. During that time, he wants to also get signed with a record label because he heard about some kid who was performing at Wanda World the summer before and got signed to a record deal, and he wants that as well. And while he's working at Wanda World, he runs into Luke, who absolutely despises country music because his grandma is Verna Rose, who is best friends with Wanda Jean and another country star. Ultimately, like, her entire career kind of fell apart because of her falling out with Wanda Jean. You're getting a dual POV in this book, following the two of them navigating their relationship as they meet and as they're working at Wanda World, as well as navigating some other family aspects in Luke's life. I was very excited to read this when I read it because the concept of having a character who absolutely loves something and a character who absolutely despises something, I think, is a nice way to create tension between the two of them. The chemistry between the two of them was very good. They have a meet cute. They literally like run into each other while at Wanda World. This book is taking place in Tennessee, so they are dating in secret in a way because Luke is not fully comfortable with being out in the world just because it's the South. So there are, of course, like homophobic underlyings throughout this book. There is a use of a slur at the beginning of this book, so just warning if you decide to read it. I highly recommend this book. I really, really enjoyed it. Luke also lies about working at Wanda World because he thinks his mom like hates everything to do with country music because it ruined his grandma's life. So he hides the fact that he works at Wanda World, and he's also like the breadwinner kid in this book. Overall, their characters and their chemistry I thought worked really well together. I could believe that they really did have feelings for each other and they really cared about each other. you have a character who is openly out, that is Emmett, and is proud to be out, and then you have Luke, who is not so comfortable with his sexuality, but like is sure in his sexuality, just not fully comfortable with being out as himself due to his environment and the circumstances that exist around that, as being an openly gay man in the South. The fact that like Emmett is willing to help Luke like come to terms with the type of person that he was, I thought was very, very sweet. It's a cute little summer romance, complement each other, and I think that that worked out in the terms of this book. And the way that this book kind of unfolds is that one of them is one way and the other is another, but it works in their favor when they do things together. This book had a lot of common tropes that exist within romance books. A few cliches, but it kind of worked in its favor. It being set in an amusement park during the summer as teenagers working is just so interesting. Especially in a place that's like similar to Dolly World. I just thought it was really silly. When I finished this book, I read like Brian P. Kennedy's little author blurb at the back, and it was like, he is a huge fan of Dolly Parton, and it just like made so many things make sense. Spoiler warning, skip down to the time code. There is a third act breakup in this one as well. They do end up getting back together, but I genuinely do not think that they stayed together afterwards, just because of the circumstances that they were focusing on throughout the book kind of made sense as to why they broke up. That being, Emmett was only going to be in the South for the summer and then go home. But I am a hopeless romantic, so I like to assume that they stayed together and all was well. Twists and the reveals in this book were super interesting, and I genuinely didn't see some of them coming. I did not expect to see what was revealed when it was, and it was so heartwarming and sweet, the B-plots that were in existence in this book. It tied so much together between the two of them and their relationship, as well as like what's going on in their individual lives as well. The character development between the two of them as well as individually was so interesting. I kind of feel like Luke stole the show in a way. His character development made me so happy, and I felt heavier than Emmett's was. That's not to like compare their experiences, but to me what was going on in Luke's life was very different from what was going on in Emmett's. And like Emmett's was his drive to be the #1 gay country star to exist, while Luke was dealing with like family history. The two are not the same. Emmett's storyline was interesting and engaging. It's just I was more drawn to Luke's story, and that the discovering of like what went on with his grandmother and how it's all connected to Wanda Jean, and like all of that being unveiled, I thought was much more interesting and engaging than Emmett and the stuff that goes on with him in the record label. I did like both of their characters a lot, though I wasn't really annoyed by either one of them. I just thought that they made poor decisions because, you know, they're teenage boys in this book, and they're gonna make stupid choices, and they're gonna say stupid things. That's just how men are. Overall, I really like this book. I ended up giving it a 4-star rating. Brian D. Kennedy is probably a new favorite queer author. He does have another book that I actually really want to read, so I really loved his writing style. I thought it was super dynamic, and the way that he talks about certain issues that exist in the world for gay men, I thought was very well done, and he did it in a very successful way. And honestly, reading something that takes place in a parallel to Dolly World was so much fun. I love Dolly Parton, and the way that Wanda Jean was described was so entertaining and lovely. It was a very fun book. I really, really liked it. So yeah, 4 stars for me on that one. Okay, we are finally coming up on the last book that I read for this video, and I just want to preface this book a little bit before I get into it. The last book that I read was What If It's Us, and this book is extremely different from the other 5 because this one was co-written between 2 authors. They both have a very big name in the queer community when it comes to YA queer books. Becky Alberti, who is known for Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda, which then led to Love, Simon being made on Hulu. We have Adam Cervella, who wrote They Both Die in the End, which is a like classic in the queer contemporary genre. I own They Both Die in the End, and I was going to read it for this video because Adam Silvera is a gay author, but I did not want to read it because it didn't seem like it was the rom-com type. When I saw that he co-wrote this book as well, I kind of looked past the fact that Becky, who is a woman, was writing an book with him. I really do wish I read They Both Die in the End, though. So this book is following Arthur, who is visiting New York for the summer. He is originally from Georgia, and he is only in New York for the summer. He bumps into Ben, who is the other love interest, at the post office in New York, where they have a meet cute, and then, like, a bunch of random shit happens, and they get separated. And they talked for a little bit, and Arthur does not get Ben's name. Ben gets Arthur's name, but they don't see each other again. Arthur is set on the fact that him and Ben are supposed to be together, that the universe sent them together to meet at the post office, so he makes it his mission to find Ben in New York City, which is, like, virtually impossible. However, he does manage to find Ben in the rom-com style of things. They kindled their relationship from there. There were a few major gripes I had with this book, being the writing style that I think is mainly Becky's writing style. I tried to read Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda a really long time ago when Love, Simon was coming out. I read the first few pages and I could not get through it. Her writing style is not for me. I find it incredibly annoying. Millennial woman core, and I don't like, in the worst way. The worst version of that is what her writing style is like. Characters of this book, the characters' voices, even though it's a dual POV, sound the exact same. Don't have a lot of variation between their character in the first few chapters, and they sound the exact same when they're speaking. If you put like one chapter next to another and didn't tell me whose POV I was reading from, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. The major detail that makes Ben different from Arthur is not revealed until chapters into the book, and that is that Ben is Puerto Rican, because Adam Silvera is Puerto Rican. There's a lot of millennial language used in this book. The amount of times I read the word cringe in this book alone, it was just overused to the point where it just became annoying. Speaking of overused, the references to pop culture in this book made me want to scream. I can't count how many times I have read a book that mentioned Hamilton and Lin-Manuel Miranda as many times as this book did. If it wasn't Hamilton, it was Harry Potter, and the two of those are huge pieces of pop culture, but they don't need to be mentioned every 10 pages or 10 times on one page. Yeah, they're teenage boys and like they have interests and stuff, and that's kind of what brings them together, but you don't need to bring it up every single time. Arthur is like a textbook fanboy of Hamilton, and he does not shut the fuck up about it. I also hated his character, but that's a different point. There was literally a whole portion of this book where Arthur is exposing Ben to Hamilton, and it goes on for like 5 pages. I genuinely didn't care. If you took all of the references out of this book, it probably would have made this book better. It also felt like there was absolutely no chemistry between the two of them. More like a gaslit stalker situation, because when I tell you that Arthur literally like tracked Ben down and Ben was like, yeah, this is cool. If someone did that to me, I would be like, get away from me, you absolute freak. Not only that, they just didn't work well together. They had like multiple do-over first dates because it was just so awkward and uncomfortable for the two of them. And I get it, they're teenage boys, they don't really know anything. But it was just like they didn't mesh, like at all. Arthur always talked about himself, and it just got like annoying, and Ben like didn't want to talk about himself, so he didn't really give much away about himself. They did not work well together. Really felt like their relationship was just held together by a piece of twine, a glue stick, and attraction. That was pretty much it. They are dumb teenage boys, and they thought the other person was attractive and silly goofy, so they were like, yeah, no, this is a good relationship, and it wasn't. It was not a good relationship. Spoiler warning, but I really don't care, because don't read this book. They have a third act breakup. They get back together, and then they break up again in the epilogue. They are not together by the end of the book. when you finish this book, they are not together. Because there is a second book that is a second chance romance book between the two of them, and there's also like a love triangle apparently, and I'm not gonna read it, but like, why? Both of them suck. They're terrible with emotions, they're terrible at communicating, and they just don't mesh well together at all. I did not like this book. I forced myself to finish it. I wanted to DNF this book, but I didn't, for the sake of this video, because there were a little bit of like good moments in this book that kind of just like sucked me back in to reading this book. One of them being the side character of Dylan, who is Ben's best friend. Dylan was the saving grace of this book. I'm not even gonna lie. He was super funny. He was kind of like a Jake Peralta variant character archetype, where he was super goofy and didn't really take anything seriously. And there were moments I actually laughed out loud and made like actual noise in the real world while reading this book because of things Dylan said and did. He was the best part about this book. And he was the best supportive character of Ben, even though Ben kind of sucked. And Arthur also kind of sucked, but his friends, I didn't like them very much. The really cute part that happened in this book that I genuinely enjoyed was when Ben and Arthur's families met and had dinner together. That entire chapter was genuinely so sweet. I thoroughly enjoyed reading that. Again, the only favorite part I had of this book. This book is what I imagine a train crash is like. You can't look away, and you just want to see what happens, but ultimately the train just explodes, and you're devastated because it didn't go in a positive direction at all. I wanted to DNF it so bad, but I didn't because I was reading this book specifically for this video, and I wanted to see if anything like happened at the end, and it did. It just pissed me off. This book was so long. It was almost 400 pages, and it didn't need to be. There was also that part too. A few moments of hilarity for this rom-com book were solely tied to Dylan's character, and the few like romantic parts of this book were solely tied to Ben's character. Arthur didn't really do anything other than annoy the shit out of me, but I think that that's because he was written by Becky. The way I think that this book was written, just based off of context clues and logic, is that Arthur was written by Becky and Ben was written by Adam, and that's kind of why I think I liked Ben's character a little bit more, because he had more complexity to him. I wish that there was more to do with Ben being Puerto Rican than there actually was in this book, because you can't bring up a culture thing and make a big deal about colorism and whatnot, but then not have him being Puerto Rican be a huge aspect of his character and why it's important to him. I do think it was mostly Becky's writing that I didn't like in this book, and it was because it had the flavor of generic white millennial woman that makes you want to stop in your tracks every single time that you get a whiff of it. I have faith in Adam's writing because I really did enjoy Ben's character. I hated Arthur with every bone in my body. I did not like him. I found him incredibly annoying. He did nothing but annoy me the entire time. Ben was annoying at some points, but he was less insufferable than Arthur was. I ended up giving it 2 stars because honestly I would have given it 1, but Dylan's character was so funny and entertaining, and his entire subplot with his girlfriend was really silly, and I really liked his character, and also I didn't hate Ben that much. So reading this after reading A Little Bit Country was like fucking whiplash though, because that was so well written, and so like the character development was so good, and the chemistry between them like actually existed. And then I read this book and I was like, what is going on? What is happening? I hated this. So that was all 6 of the books that I read. I did a breakdown of all of the tropes and cliches that I saw in all of these books with cute little box plot charts. A lot more overlap and similarities between these books than I thought there was going to be, and as I was reading I was like, wow, I did not do this on purpose. There were just so much overlap sometimes. I was like, that's so funny that this detail is also in this book as well. When I was planning on the books that I was going to read for this video, I was not looking at the types of tropes and cliches that existed in these books. I just kind of picked books willy-nilly, and it's just really funny that there was so much overlap between them. It wasn't even just like one common thing from like one subgroup of the genre to another. It was kind of like across the board. Unfortunately, the lack of communication or the miscommunication trope was a common trope across all 6 of these, which sucks for me because I hate that trope so much. Almost like any big problems that arise with these characters and any like big emotions that they had could have just been solved if they just talked to each other. Please talk to each other. Oh my gosh, it won't kill you. Also, the cliche of, oh no, I have feelings, what, existed in all 6 of these books as well, which is really funny because not all of them had fake dating in them. It was just like the realization that these characters had of like, oh shit, I do have emotions. That's a crazy concept for me. Yeah, you do. This is a romance book. Of course you're gonna have feelings, you stupid character. And I enjoy yelling at pieces of paper in my pastime. That's what reading is for me. It's fun. It's therapeutic. I really enjoyed 5 out of 6 of these books. 3 of them being within the 4-star rating for me, and I have found a lot of new authors that I probably wouldn't have found if I didn't do this deep dive into the genre. Branching out into this genre actually made me enjoy reading this genre, and I do have a desire to read more romance books now, just because I did this deep dive and actually picked up on a few things that I actually like when it comes to romance books. I had a lot of fun reading these books, and I can really understand why people read romance more, because when it's done right, you're just reading a book of what it's like to find someone and to be a human being and find the joys and love of life and sharing that with another person, which I think is incredibly lovely. I really see myself reading some more romance books in the future, so if you have any other recommendations, they don't necessarily have to be like rom-com level, but like any other really good romance recommendations, please drop them in the comments. I made a goal at the beginning of the year to read more in genres that I don't usually read, and romance was one of those. Glad that I did. I kind of want to do another deep dive into another genre that I don't usually read. I actually might want to do like romantasy soon. We'll see. Maybe that is coming in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching this video if you did get this far, and if you haven't already, make sure you like this video and subscribe. I try to post videos as often as I can, and I really enjoy talking about books and films and television, so if that's your vibe, consider sticking around. All of my social media links are in the description below, so you can go ahead and find me there. Do something nice for yourself today. Remember, you are loved, especially by me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.